Repeal the 19th was trending earlier, and there's a bunch of posts with thousands of retweets. This one, they're ratioed. This one is from July 18th. Share of 18 to 29-year-olds who identify as liberal by gender, 40% of women, 25% of men. And we know that men are actually starting to skew conservative in a lot of countries, South Korea, for instance. And then I don't know why, like Carl Benjamin says, American politics explained in one chart. Democrats, let's see, 39% married men, 42% married women, 68% unmarried women. And so I'm gonna say this. We're headed for a serious crisis in this regard, in that women overwhelmingly vote for the party of war, and they are not subject to the draft. Right. That, I don't think that can stand. Now, that being said, I don't think the issue is women voting. I think the issue is people who have no stake in community voting. Because certainly women who have sons, whether they could be drafted or not, are concerned about whether or not their kids would go to war. But I do think a great solution that I've often talked about is actually not repealing 19th. It is making it so you have to sign up for the draft if you want to vote.
Yeah. Based. I like it.
Because like Ian would never vote again.
If you look at women who are married voting patterns, it's very different from single women voting patterns. And I think it's for that reason they tend to adopt the politics of their husband quite often.
Or is it that women who have those politics are more likely to get married?
Hard to say, chicken or the egg. But I think Pearl has shared stats with me before that show that like women, when they're younger, do tend to vote more Democrat, especially like college tends to make you pretty liberal and all that if you're a woman. And then when they get older, get married, have kids, then they start voting more conservative, more right wing.
I do think it's true, right? The saying is, if you're not liberal when you're young, you have no heart. And if you're not conservative when you're older, you have no head. But that is, I believe it's false. I think the issue, I think that's propaganda made by the left to be like, young people.
That was a Churchill quote, wasn't it?
Is that what it is?
I think so.
Well, I think it's espoused, especially by the left, to say like young people are supposed to be liberal. No, that's BS. And the reason they're liberal is because they were isolated from their parents. Once industrialization happened and kids started going to institutionalized learning facilities, all of a sudden the kids were not absorbing the values of their parents, but the values of the machine.
Also, the idea that we can all do this together is very communistic and it's very idealistic. And I used to think in those terms and speak in those terms. All of us, we can help everyone, and it's ridiculously nonsensical. You can't. You can help some people. I think Abe Lincoln said it well. You can help some people all the time and all the people some of the time, but you can't help all the people all the time.
No,
that's communism.
It was fool the people.
Fool?
It was you can fool all the people some of the time, or some of the people all the time.
My Civil War history is bunk, apparently. I'm finding out.
Well, maybe I'm wrong.
Okay, but anyway, but he made the point about all and some and how all the time is not realistic. And so I learned that in my late 20s, and in my early 30s, I started to realize that you just have to take care of yourself
Abraham Lincoln.
first.
You can fool some of the people all the time and all of the people some of the time, but you cannot fool all of the people all the time.
Sorry, Abe. You're the man. So I guess I became more conservative in that but it was just nonsense. The idea that you can help all the people all the time is toxic. And that level of compassion is toxic.
Pearl's tweeting at me because what did she? So there's like let me see if I can pull it up. Okay, there's a tweet from Mary Morgan of Pop Culture Crisis. Check out popculturecrisis.com, where some guy is talking to a woman saying like, "I'm taking you off the market," and then he's like, "We can start with dinner, but I'm not going to wait until marriage." And she's like, "No, then it's not happening."
That was Morgan McMichael. She tweeted that out.
Right.
It's her.
Mary Morgan responded saying, "I never understand why some people think you must have sex with someone to know whether you're compatible. It's a lie." And then Pearl responded, "Trad women do not understand how important sex is to men. It's all about what they want and how they want to be courted." And then Mary says, "Okay, Pearl. So if a woman has sex before marriage, she is unmarriageable trash. But if it's after, she's entitled. What's your message?" I responded with, "Oh, she's not telling anyone what to do." And then Pearl said, you never have any of this energy in person, Tim. Say it with your chest." In person? She's been here one time. And I asked her that literally on the show when she was just like, "Well, how come she was like criticizing Lauren." And I was just like, "Well, then what do you think she should do?" And she's like, "Oh, I'm not telling anyone what to do." So you have no message.
I think she kind of misread what Mary was trying to say, too. Mary wasn't saying, like, this has to be on women's terms. She was more, like, when Pearl says women don't understand how important sex is, that might be true, but that's not the same thing as saying, you know, if you're insisting on sex beforehand, the whole sexual compatibility thing, I totally agree with Mary on. This idea that you got to run through 50 bodies to figure out who you're sexually compatible with, things only fit together in so many ways. You know, it's not that there's not like this profound science to it. Like a lot of the red pill dating coach type of guys will say this, and I'm always like, that is so ridiculous.
I think
I don't believe in the compatibility, like, oh, we have to practice with 100 people to find out who I'm compatible with. It's like, you know, within a few minutes of meeting a guy if you're attracted to him or not.
the issue is everything is delayed. Maturity is delayed. Adulthood is delayed. People used to have kids in their early 20s. I think it was like 21 or 22
Yep.
was like the average age for building a
Be
family.
14 in like the 1600s, 1700s.
I don't think that's true. That's not true.
Kings would marry 14-year-olds off.
Yeah, but they wouldn't have kids. So interestingly, the access to food and fats were low. So women were not developing at younger ages like that we see now in it with the American Western diet, which is ice cream and milk and all these fats.
Maybe 16.
So it was actually around 18, and that's why the age was around then, because humans were shorter because we were malnourished and stunted. As we can see now, humans are getting taller and taller because we have access to this just like ridiculous amount of food and every nutrient you could ever want and vitamin
Shout
and
out to
supplements.
Barron Trump for that.
Yeah, I do. I was like 8
in
feet
America now, certain groups are getting shorter. Like Mexican
Yeah.
women are getting
Wow.
shorter on average by like a half an inch to an inch than they were 30, 40 years ago
Wow.
because of the crap, you know, processed
Oh, yeah.
corn and oil diet.
But this is interesting. Puberty was actually a little bit later
Yeah.
because of access to food, namely the access to fats. It's a lot harder to get in the wild. And then now with the American diet, fats are so high, it's made things happen sooner and sooner, or younger and younger.
That's
So
interesting.
it was not the case, but it was still young. You know, I think probably 18 or whatever. And then in the United States, it was like 20 or 20, 22. People are starting to have families. Now I think the average age of a woman having a kid is like 30
30 or 31.
or 31 because they got to have their careers first.
And because of that, for the first time since antibiotics, we're seeing rising mortality rates in women, maternal mortality rates. In the most advanced, medically advanced country ever known to man, we now have rising maternal mortality rates because, and the CDC says this, it's not Rach making it up, it's because of the advanced age of pregnancy now.
Yeah. It is a lot of work to have babies.
Sure is.
Yeah. There's a lot of.
I would
it's-
imagine.
That's why the Spartans, as legend tells, I believe this is true, the only way to get a tombstone, a headstone, as a man was to die in battle, and as a woman was to die in childbirth. If you have the kid, they're like, well, congratulations, everyone, like women do this. But if you die, it's like, it was a valiant effort.
Yeah, pregnancy's wild. I mean, women grow essentially a new organ, the placenta, to have children. The body is capable of crazy things, and I think a lot of the conversation around casual sex and all this stuff is largely because with birth control, we pretend like pregnancy is a bad thing and or something that you should avoid at all costs. And I think that's one of the reasons that men and women are ultimately really out of alignment when they have conversations. Like if you're a man and, you know, you aren't trying to, like, ultimately a lot of men are driven, have a high sex drive because they are trying to have children, right? So then if you are dating a lot of girls on birth control, and again, it's like kind of blurring what the purpose of this is, then of course you're like, gotta sleep with everybody because you're not actually meeting your biological need. And I think with women, they are stunted to understand what their bodies naturally want to do because they, again, are kind of encouraged and poisoned to
propaganda.
think, both propaganda and also literally poisoned to feel like getting like pregnancies, the natural hormone cycles are actually their enemies. And I think that's sad. How can you have honest conversations if we don't even acknowledge like the role of what our bodies are supposed to do?
Rhetoric around abortion now is that this is a parasite inside of me that I must defend.
It's going to ruin your life. It'll ruin your life. I mean, how often is that the thing? You can't have a baby. It'll ruin your life.
Oh, I asked, I think we were doing like a TikTok thing where we were, on the Crucible, shout out to the Crucible. We like to go into TikTok and argue with some of the Gen Z people in there, some of the craziest people. And they were debating this. And I went in and I was asking them about this. And they were like, don't you know how many women die in childbirth? And I was like, how many do you think it is? And they were like, it's like 50%. It's like 50% or something. I'm like, you think that 50% of women die of births, the mother dies? And they're like, yeah, dude, it's like the propaganda is so insane that this little group of people who were like pro-choice strongly believed that like when you have a baby, you got a 50-50 shot of just not making it. And I was like, dude, humans wouldn't exist if that were the case, but they don't even think about it. And this has started, we've got a full century. It's arguably longer, like the Malthusians started 300 years ago with this nonsense. But Margaret Sanger put out a highly influential book in the 1920s where I think this...
Margaret Sanger, what a gal, am I right?
I have a whole chapter about her in my book, and I literally had nightmares while I was researching and writing it. And I had like times where I was so angry I would almost start to cry reading what she did, because she basically fabricated an entire book where she claimed to have hundreds of letters from women around the country that she published in the form of a book, where these women were writing her saying, I'm only 23 and I'm on my 17th baby and my internal organs are falling out and I don't know what's causing it or how to stop it. Please help me. Well, that's ridiculous on its face for a lot of reasons. Like, my grandma's 98, and when I was researching this, I called her and I said, Grandma, when your mom was having you and your sisters and brothers, did she know how babies were made and how to prevent that? You know?
Nope, everyone's just stumbling around in the dark.
She's like, of course. And in fact, she said after my brother, the doctor told her, you know, it would probably be dangerous for her to have more. And she said, my parents, they didn't come right out and say it, but they knew what to do about that. They knew ways around it.
Yeah.
And they didn't have any more. I went to the Margaret Sanger Papers Project, which is basically where you go if you want anything she's ever done. If she blew her nose in a tissue, they've got that somewhere, right? They've got everything the woman ever did. All of her stuff is very well preserved. I was like, where can I read any of these thousands of letters from all these women? And they said, well, we only have 3.
Weird how that happens.
Out of thousands of letters, you only preserved 3. But you have like literal notes that she wrote, you know, from when she was a teenager or something. You have everything else, but out of the thousands of letters, you only have 3. Why? And they said, well, we believe that a lot of it was just lost to time, or that she sent many of these letters to the Planned Parenthood doctors to like keep them going when they were feeling demoralized. And I was like, I think this whole thing is...
It's
baloney.
crazy.
And I think it was, and she faked a lot of stuff.
A ton of stuff. There's this study on birth control that was done in Puerto Rico. I'm sure you know about this, but you know, that was done basically because of the support of Planned Parenthood, where they just did not tell women what was going on, and they would write off women who were like, I am having serious side effects. They'd be like, hysteria, get them out of this study. It doesn't matter. I mean, it's such a gross abuse. You would never be able to do it today.
It was human experimentation.
And it opened the door to the birth control mania that we have today. I mean, Margaret Sanger is infamous in really all of the ways that she influenced American culture, in my opinion, for the worse. I mean, to the detriment of not just families. I mean, a lot of things have done bad things to American families, but to women themselves. Under this guise of I'm here for you and science and whatever else, like
saving the
she
women.
Treated them terribly and lied to them always.
Yeah. Absolutely. And now I go to TikTok and talk to girls who believe they have a 50-50 chance of dying if they ever dare have a child, and we wonder why the birth rate is like in the basement.
Yeah.
There's the propaganda. There's I think that the Christian, like, don't sex before marriage thing is like the church being like, we want to make sure that Christians make more Christians, so lock them into a government contract with marriage, and then they have the kids there. Because otherwise, what the hell is marriage other than a government contract? But then there's also, you're saying there's chemical reasons that women are having babies later because birth control tricks them into thinking they don't want it. And then, but the men are all oversexed because of the hormones, because of the diets, and
I just think that the two things are out of alignment, right? So women take birth control because they want to have their girl boss careers or whatever else. I mean, to be fair, I know a lot of women who were, urged to get on birth control for side effects for their hormones, right? Like, they have really bad cramping. We should get on birth control. You have terrible acne. You should get on birth control.
Yep.
You gained weight, you're sad. And literally anything. It was the completely overprescribed cure-all pill to basically anything about being female. Would really, like, part of it is just you have to work with your body and learn your hormones.
Yeah.
And so, it also famously kills the sex drive for a lot of women. So they are operating very differently than if they would be if they were actually in alignment with their hormones. I know for some people, getting on birth control is the right move. There are medical complications, whatever. I'm not saying that it should never, ever, ever, ever been an option, but I think we overprescribe it, and we don't talk about the social consequences.
They push it really hard, and they pass it out like it's a risk-free vitamin that's appropriate for everyone when it's completely not. And we know that women choose mates differently when they're on birth control because the pill works by making your body think it's already pregnant. and your mate selection changes to like a more
Docile guy.
a softer type of dude rather than like maybe a more aggressive alpha type of guy. For a lot of women, that never reverses. They also make it sound like you can go off of birth control and just instantly have babies, where for a lot of women, that doesn't happen. It might take a really long time or not happen at all. There's just a lot of reasons why you wouldn't want this. But I guess just the point of it is that this is supposed to be our primary biological imperative. And even men with the lower testosterone are not even as inclined as they used to be, but they're still more inclined than the women are, because the women are getting the hormones and the massive amounts of propaganda telling them that being a mom is for losers who couldn't hack it in the career world, that if you don't have a degree and if you don't have a career, you're stupid, you're just non-competitive in the workplace, you're never going to do anything with your life. I just had somebody on Twitter the other day say this to me again, like, oh, wow, just popping out babies your whole life, that must be really sad for you. You never did anything with your life. You know, this is the attitude. So it's like, why would young girls want to do that?
I think it's Russian propaganda. I'm half kidding. I do think that American adversaries are running bots. This is a fact. America's adversaries run troll accounts on social media. Fact. I believe a large component of it is to convince women and people to be degenerate, to push trends that are damaging to the infrastructure of the United States. The children are the future, right? And so you go on social media, you manipulate the algorithm. Everyone was critical of TikTok. And then you get a bunch of women to not have kids. And then what happens? 20 to 40 years, America is weakened and can't compete on the international stage.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we're already having labor force shortages. We're having supply chain problems. I don't know if you guys have like tried to go through a drive-through lately. I try to avoid it if I can, but sometimes you do, and it's like,
it's crazy.
Nobody knows what they're doing. You can't get the thing you ordered. It's like things are just already breaking down and not working.
Costs are through the roof too.
Yeah.
Everything's becoming more and more expensive. So I was having a conversation about this a little while ago, and I can't remember who I was talking to. We were talking about why people aren't having kids. And of course, everyone says, well, it's too expensive to have kids. And I think this is a component of market shifts. If the market does not mass produce products for children, those products become more expensive. So it's volume. We want to sell cast brew, cold brew. Cast brew coffee in cold brew cans. We cannot order the tens of millions you have to order to make it cost effective. If you order tens of millions and you make 1 cent off of each can, then you're making enough to cover your HR, your headquarters, your administrative costs, shipping and everything. Of course, if we were to try and sell it at the level we can, it's like $5 a can, because we need to make 50 cents to $1 on every can. Otherwise, we can't afford to pay our staff and our employees. So scale matters. If 90%, less diapers are being sold, then they have to sell the diapers for more money.
Right.
Then those who have kids are like, it's too expensive to have kids. So that the less people have kids, the more it's going to cost for child products. And then more people are going to make the excuse, well, I can't afford it. That's where we're headed right now.
I know people say that, but that does kind of rub up against the fact that the demographic that is still reproducing the most tends to be the poorer people.
And then we have the government welfare programs.
Yes.
Right.
And I mean, a lot of people see public education as just like free daycare. This is the other reason that it's so tough. I've gotten a lot of flack for saying homeschool, because people are like, well, we can't abandon the public institutions. We have to get in there and we have to take the schools back. And I'm like, well, first of all, look into the founding of public education and what it's really about. And you might see that that's not very plausible just based on that. But the other thing is, how are we going to retake the schools? How are we going to get public education where we need it when it's like you need them because your wife has to work? You need 2 incomes now. So you have to send your kids to the public school. You need the 7 hours a day of free daycare. What exactly, what
you
leverage
pay for
do
with
you
your
have?
taxes? Yeah.
Yeah. What leverage do you have to, get that back? And if not enough people are having more kids, it's like, especially right wingers, like, you got to have more kids. This is the same thing with the white replacement people. People will come at me for, why don't you talk about white replacement? I'm like, I had 5 babies. When you have 5 babies, then you can come yell at me about how I'm not doing enough, I guess. But you're almost every time, it's some guy who's never had a kid or some person who's totally childless yelling at me about white replacement. So it's just like, who's stopping you from starting a family? You can. And if you think you can't because of all the propaganda, I mean, you
got to go to church.
Well, I think that helps. That's what I do. But
Yep. Good luck going to a bar and trying to meet a woman who's going to want to have a family. And she exists for sure.
yeah,
You're better off going like, what do they say? The meme is that you go to the supermarket to meet, or the laundromat, because you're meeting someone who's like doing something responsible. You go to a bar, you're not going to meet anyone worth it. I think those are all just jokes. Like, I don't, like, come on. A woman at the grocery store, you're going to walk up and hit on her. That's going to be weird. But you're at church and you're with community and you meet people, and then you know, there's church activities, or you might go on like a retreat or something, and then you make friends with people, you meet people.
it's just so tough. I don't even have a good answer for like what to do about the dating market. Andrew and I always feel like we caught the last chopper out of Nam. You know what I mean? Like,
indeed you did. I feel bad for Gen Z in this regard because everything's internet based.
Yeah.
And the internet is telling people to do stupid things. So people, you know, cancel culture is a really good example of this. When, you know, some of the people that we've worked with, and I'm sure you've experienced, a lot of people have, a year ago, 2 years ago, they're really scared of getting canceled and say, oh, I can't speak. I can't say that I like Donald Trump. And now there are a few people that I know who have since come out and been like, I'm going to vote for Trump. And they went, hey, nothing happened.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, right. You're getting mean comments though, right? Like, oh yeah, people are mean to me on X and Instagram. And I'm like, and then what happened? Nothing happened. And I'm like, yeah, because you can't base your life off of what strangers from San Francisco are telling you on the internet.
Yeah.
You go outside here, everyone's got FJB flags. There's I think it's called Mother Shuckers. Shout out to Mother Shuckers Crab Shack or whatever. I think that's what it's called. Is that what it's
The
called?
one in Martinsburg?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I think that is what it's called.
Oh, it's like there's so much FJB stuff that you get overwhelmed. You walk in, you're like, I get it.
It's the one with the giant crab on the outside,
it
right?
plays
It
is
looks
great.
like it's going to be totally nautical themed, but I've heard it's very, very pro-Trump, or at least FJB on the inside.
Oh, dude, it's super anti Joe Biden, FJB, pro Trump, and there's like a sign inside, and it says, if any of the signs in here offend you, please let us know. We could all use a good laugh. So I'm a big fan, but that's this community. I know for a fact if I go to San Francisco, it's going to be inverted. It'll be the different. So when people are mean to me online, I'm like, yeah, that guy lives in San Francisco, whatever. Gen Z people are going to be experiencing that, and that's what's happening now with social media, telling them how to date and how to do all this stuff. When we have like, you know, these red pill guys on Culture War or whatever, they're like, look, man, these women, they're all doing these things and they're doing this thing, so you got to run through 50 women. And I'm like, I don't think that applies to like Amish country. Pretty sure if you go to like Pennsylvania and you go into the middle of, you know, Amish country or whatever, and you go meet some Mennonites, the women ain't doing none of that stuff. So it's really about you living in New York or LA or Miami or something.
Yeah.
And these are the people you've surrounded yourself with.
Yeah.
Try to date with text is a pain in the ass. I don't know if you guys have done internet dating, probably not, but like
I have not.
you can tell a lot about
Jesus.
your attractiveness to someone by the sound of their voice, in my opinion,
Yeah.
like the way it vibrates your body. You're like, wow, that's
Just the
healing
whole
my DNA.
physical presence of a person is so important. And like my daughters who are older and 21, 23 trying to date, it's like a nightmare out there for them. It is like rough. The stories I hear about them just trying to have a normal date is like, it's pretty bad. So I'm just like, I wish I had better advice for you, but it's like they don't know how to meet. Whereas like I was an 80s, 90s kid. So it was like the whole thing was based off the physical chemistry of just meeting a person face to face.
Who was it? There was an author. I don't know if it was Vonnegut or someone. Is he still alive?
Kurt Vonnegut?
Yeah.
I don't know. I'll look
There was
it
a
up.
story I was reading about some author guy, and he needed to send a letter, so he needed an envelope. And then he said to his wife or something, like, I'm going to go buy an envelope. And then she was like, just order it off the internet. And he was like, no, I'm good. I'm going to go to the store and get an envelope. And she's like, I don't understand. You can just buy it online. Why would you go to the store? And he said, because when I'm going to the store, I'm passing by my neighbor who has a new dog who tells me the dog's name. I see the fire truck drive by and I give the firefighters a thumbs up. Yeah. Then I go in and I have a small talk conversation with the clerk as I'm buying the envelope. I'm not buying an envelope. I'm living my life.
Right.
Something like that. I'm paraphrasing.
Kurt died in 2007.
So
Kurt Vonnegut.
maybe I'm not thinking of him or whatever. It's a meme. I'm sure in the chat they're going to be like, oh, I know that meme. It was this guy or whatever, but something like that.
Yeah, man, physical presence, that's it. I like video chat. Like you can kind of get to know somebody through video chat. That's way better than text. And it's way better than a phone call because you're looking in their eyes.
I think a lot of it used to be more about community as a structure, right? Like when you like when you're dating in a small town, right, somebody knows the person that you're probably going to go out with, right? You have some kind of social connection to them. Whereas right now, I think dating apps are part of it, but I think generally social media or the movement of our town square and the center of our social lives being online and virtual means that like you just think there are endless options, and
Yes.
you can think that like anyone out there would be better, and it. Again, I think it encourages a level of like selfishness or self-delusion where you don't have to reflect on yourself and be like, well, what am I not bringing to the table, or how am I erring in this situation? How could I be better both for myself and for a potential future? I think there was a time. I mean, there's a podcast that I listened to that will tell these stories about whatever, and they had this line that was like, they're talking about their parents' generation. They said they met the way everyone met in the 80s at a dinner party through a mutual friend who everyone immediately forgot, right? But there were practices of like how you interact socially that wasn't just like romantic or online. I think a lot of young people, like, those are the way they interact right now. They're either online or they're trying to date, and there's a whole variety of social interactions that you need to have in between, friendships, socially, to be a well-rounded person. Sorry.
I just realized how bad it's gotten. It's gotten so bad that the president of the United States broke up with us via Twitter, you guys.
Yeah.
Like, that's how
And then
bad it is.
I had his
for a couple
intern do
days.
it too.
Thanks for checking out this clip from Timcast IRL. Make sure to watch the show live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. Subscribe to this channel, and we will see you all there.